Hello, my name is Michaela O'Connor Abrams, founder of Mocha Plus. Welcome to our Collective Conscience series. We created this series for you to bring together great minds from around the world on myriad topics that we hope will expand your mind, will challenge your current beliefs, and give you an opportunity to be inspired with every video. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody. My name is Michaela O'Connor Abrams. If I have not met you or I've not been the one to invite you to our Collective Conscience Salon, my business partner at Mocha Plus, Shelly Tatum Karen, is unable to join today because today she and her husband and Graham, her 13-year-old, started a road trip in an RV. And when I tell you that we need the play-by-play when she gets back, I'm certainly not kidding, because I never thought I'd see this happen. So I will be flying solo today, and in so doing, I want to start with the whole purpose of Collective Conscience for those of you who are new with us. So Shelly and I started discussing what we could do to bring together people from all walks of life to talk about passions, perhaps their book. We've had a neuroscientist, chefs, farmers, really focusing on the diversity of the society and things that actually unite us. Even if we have different ideas and positions on things, we wanted to find really wonderful inspirational content through our speakers to begin the week that really gives you great, fun ideas and inspiration for the week. And along came COVID, and we went from doing it in person to on Zoom. So we've had a wonderful time doing it. I hope those of you who have been with us for several weeks have also. This is our 13th Collective Conscience Salon. So with that, please let me welcome Karen Wickre, my friend and colleague of many years. I said to her in the preamble here that, you know, we started working together in the last century, right after the covered wagon, and right before the World Wide Web, you know, this wonderful thing that had been very much part of education and research that now is going to be unleashed on the greater populace so that we could all use it. And use it we have, and abuse it we have. And it is going to be one of the aspects and topics that we have. I invited Karen for probably obvious reasons. If you responded to the invitation and probably took the time to Google Karen and look at the fact that she has been a stellar communicator for a very long time, and joined, went from high-tech media to join Google as one of the first 500 employees before, and when she left there were 50,000, and other tech startups. So I could go on about her resume, but I think you probably know it. If you don't, take the time to look at it, because her accomplishments are many. And her book, Taking the Work Out of Networking, is, I think, one of her greatest accomplishments, because it's given everyone a tool to analyze the ways in which networking does not have to be arduous, whether it's about your social network for friends, and I'm not talking about channels, I'm talking about really your network, and then how you manage professionally your connections. So Karen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining it. It's wonderful, and I'm glad we're both at a library. I guess I should say I am broadcasting today from the Eastern Shore. I'm in Betterton, Maryland, population 150, where my dear friend who passed away in 2015 and her husband built this beautiful home. And I've been here since the 30th, sheltering in place, which is not hard because there's no one else here. And it's great. So Karen, thank you again so much for joining.
Oh, thank you, Michaela. It's great as always to be with you. And I'm in my dining room / library in Noe Valley in San Francisco. And apologies if there's an occasional race car going by outside, as there just was a minute ago. They like to race down this stretch of street. But anyway, it's sunny and beautiful in San Francisco. So I'm also very happy to be here.
Fabulous. Well, I thought, uh-oh, we're going to have a sound problem because a huge, beautiful thunder and lightning storm, a squall, I guess they call it, came through. And I thought, okay, this might be a little interesting. But of course, it's passed, and now the moon is out, and it's beautiful here.
Yeah.
So, Karen, let's get started with kind of your purview of the import of communications today. And I'm not talking about COVID yet. We'll get into that and how it adds this layer of complexity for all of us in myriad ways. But let's just talk about the import and how it has changed so dramatically, and what your feeling is about the benefits as well as some of the challenges.
Well, the benefits are many because it's never been easier to be in touch, to meet new people, stay in touch, get back in touch with people you have known in the past through umpteen channels. And by these, I mean services like LinkedIn, which was designed for it, as well as good old email, which is the cockroach of technologies and still works just fine for staying in touch with people, to some of the social platforms that we've all gotten used to using to one degree or another. So in a certain way, just like it's the golden age of, say, newsletters, or the golden age of people giving their opinions, perhaps that's maybe not so golden, but it is a big age of that. Having ways to be in touch with people and different styles to be in touch with people, it's never been greater. Now, that brings with it a bunch of pressures, obviously, because people think, I don't know, depending on the degree of the familiarity with someone, I don't know that I'm reaching them in the right way, in the right channel. I don't know how to reach out to someone I don't know. And then there's the cryptic nature of everything from emojis to, acronyms to whatever else. And so actually the act of communicating has a lot of nuance today that perhaps again more than we've had before. But on the whole, I find it's a rich time for staying in touch with people. When you and I were working together at 2nd and Bryant Street in San Francisco, I always was someone who liked to keep in touch with people one way or another. Long ago it was through the mail. But I remember in my office at 2nd and Bryant, I had a little, tabbed address book, right? And that's where I would keep track of people's numbers and whatnot. And every day I had a Post-it on the front of it with sort of a short list of who did I need to call today. And there were answering machines in those days. So I would, it would be mostly leaving a message for someone, but it would be, I need to get in touch with this one. I want to check in with this one. And that was and whoever didn't make it off that list that day, I'd put on next day's Post-it. That was my little, this is my kind of daily habit of staying in touch. Now, no address book, no tabs, or a lot of tabs in a different place. And I may still keep a little list, but it's more in the morning. Who did I think of yesterday, or who did I talk to when I want to send an article to that I just saw, or I want their take on something in the news that's happening. And then it's like, is it a Twitter DM? Is it a Facebook private message? Is it text? Is it WhatsApp? Or is it email? And so, like I say, it's a rich period, but it also can be a little crazy making for people who are trying to navigate at least some of those.
Well, and let me add that, I completely admit, probably I'm going to give away too much information here, but that I wake up, I don't know if anybody else does this, is willing to admit it, right? I reach over, grab the phone, unplug it. I haven't even lifted my head off the pillow. I'm looking, okay, what's happening here? Who on the East Coast has been texting me? What do I need to respond to before I even get out of bed?
Yep.
And which Ariana Huffington would absolutely not approve of any of this behavior.
Correct.
And then I'm texting back immediately, and then I see, oh, wait a second, there are 26 new things on Facebook and Instagram. Well, I better look at those. And literally, and I realize that, well, it feels efficient at that moment, and it feels like, okay, that's starting my day and I'm gone. I question all the time how much I really need to do that before just like starting the day like a civil human being, getting out of bed, and whatever each of you do as your ritual. Mine is coffee and then my 5-mile walk with the dog, and of course the earbuds in, and I'm making the conversations from the people. So I think we all can be a slave to this all the time, and constantly feel like, am I being judged if I don't do it? If I'm not on it, if I haven't responded that morning. So you talk about this a little bit in the book about taking the work out of it. What's your feeling about this whole 24/7 connectedness and how much we need to do it, or is that really our own judgment of ourselves?
It really is I don't know how strongly I can encourage people step off the 24/7 thing and do what is comfortable and right for you. I think we do have a sense that, oh, everybody else is answering faster than I am, or I need to be checking all the time. And to some extent, it's the fault of social media. And here we have two camps. We have one, Facebook, which was came a little earlier, and people got used to the idea of kind of seeing this flow of what's coming in from originally their friends and family, and then right on its heels came Twitter, which is my preferred addiction, and the one that I'm always looking at to see what's happening in the world, what are we talking about, what's the zeitgeist, what's going on. But the fact is, it is up to us to step away from those. But same is true for work email. No, I mean, it may be that a company you're working for is kind of putting the pressure on, although I hope not, especially now when people are more often than not only at home doing work and the rest of life all in one place. So it is up to you, up to each of us to decide, you know what, I need a break. I'm offline for an hour, or I never am online after 6 p.m. or whatever the rule is for oneself. Or, I know people who will only use, for example, Instagram is for fun and nothing else, or something like that. So it is, I'm like you, I'm looking in the morning before my feet hit the floor. I'm looking, I admit it, but then I put it aside, and then I make the coffee, and then I get into other things before I get back to it. So it does take kind of self-governance, right? To say,
Yeah.
this is how much I'm doing and no more. Because we've all seen stories, some people here may have done this, and I'd love to hear about it, who've had sort of a platform diet, a social media diet, or a digital diet of some sort, and walk away for a vacation or whatever else. It's good to do those things just to sort of see, oh wait, let me look around me, into the outside world, and that may be one sliver of a silver lining about right now, is that it pays to go take a walk
Right.
and put down the device when you do it.
Yeah. Well, let me move over to kind of the professional side and your experience with corporate communications and putting together entire communications construct for Google and Twitter and other startups, as well as some of your nonprofit work with Yerba Buena Center for the Arts and others. This is constantly, I know for Mocha Plus clients, this is something that is really top of mind for them right now, especially. I mean, it's important always, but right now that face-to-face has been thwarted, is the way
Yeah.
one of our clients said it yesterday.
Yeah.
thwarted by the virus. That it's ever more important that you choose messages so carefully and the channel through which
Yeah.
you get them, and they're not as concerned about reaching their current clients as they are all the prospects, but
Mm.
without spamming people and without spending crazy amounts of money on different modes and methods that have been presented to them
Yeah.
to be able to reach these people. So you were doing this in the startup days, when people weren't, when Google was not just right a household word. And what would you recommend to people with young businesses? There are people on tonight that are in the real estate business, that are in the restaurant business, that are in consulting, that are in sports management. What would you suggest be the way, especially right now, to navigate this?
Well, I do always I remind people of this. You don't have to be, you personally or your business, you do not have to be on every platform. In the case of a business, you have to go where your customers are. So if it's an Instagram crowd, then you better go deep into Instagram and maybe not so much Facebook. And I'm not talking about advertising here. I'm just talking about organic uh, messages and posts and so on. If um, uh, you're in it, it's a business to business kind of setup, then perhaps a newsletter would be better, and LinkedIn reposts of the newsletter or something like that. So a strategy has to go into how do we reach people, and how often, and what do we say. And I think everybody is in general agreement. It today, the whole um, kind of ecosystem is sophisticated enough that none of us like sales messages all the time. And in fact, now we're all seeing a lot of times when it's really, really inappropriate to have sales messages. So, um, because of where we are with, businesses needing to bring more value and sort of a sense of mission to things, and a sense of fitting in society, uh, there's an appropriateness for a different kind of message than there might be otherwise for, say, prospects. Um, there's a lot more emphasis on kind of reputation and intention than maybe there used to be. Um, but it will take, in every case, really understanding what is it we're trying to communicate uh, in the specific, but also in general. We want to have kind of a regular, channel with people, and they can write back to us, or they can tweet at us if it's customer support, whatever. Um, but really think through, because there's no need to be on everything. One small and old anecdote about this. Um, I was at Google from about 2002. Um, Google bought the platform became Blogger, that was Blogger, and that became. I was an early advocate of it, and some others I worked with, to make that the sort of alternative to the press release for the company. So that would be where Google would post essentially all of its news and announcements. And we had no pushback with that. And then over time, there were not just the one blog, but then you need blogs for different products and different countries and languages, and got to be quite a network of those. But then here came Twitter, essentially in it was early 2009. It was sort of taking off beyond the original bro gang that was behind it. And I really pushed for Google having a Twitter account. And even then, 2009, Google was very well established, a household name. And, there were people who said to me, why, we already have enough channels. Why do we have to be there? And my reasoning at the time was, it's a techie thing. It was in the early days, and it's attracted all the tech reporters. So that people expect of Google to be in with a new techie thing. If it was now, probably we'd say, I'd say, well, we should look into TikTok or something. But at the time I said, we should do this. And the first sort of pushback I got was, well, we don't have any head count. And I said, you do not need headcount for this. This is I can do this because it's not all day, 24/7 tweeting, God forbid. But I knew even then it was a way to amplify messages that were, Google was already putting out. It wasn't a place then anyway, and not for a company to have breaking news. It was much more of this is what we said, and here's the link to the thing, go read it. And that's still a way that companies use it. But that's just an example of, it didn't lead us, by the way, to say, well, now we have to be on Facebook because, as you may know, Google and Facebook are not the closest of corporate friends.
Friends, yeah.
So that was never really, and therefore Instagram and so on. But anyway, it was like that served a purpose, and that became, and still today is more or less the strategy. I think Google, I'm sure, has other channels beyond that, but that's sort of the core of the company news and information still.
Yeah. So if we add video to this equation in communication, because I can just say, when Shelley and I decided on trademarking or copywriting collective conscience and wanting this to be a quote unquote meeting of the minds, not meeting in the minds from an agreement standpoint, meeting the minds from an exploration standpoint. And along comes COVID. I said, well, then we'll double down. Instead of once a month in person, we're going to do it every week. Let's do it on Monday night. Let's start the week to give everybody some new ideas and new connections and things to think about. It's been great for us. It's really been great. I do have some friends who were on the first few collective conscience salons who then kindly messaged me and said, Michaela, this is maybe hard to believe, but I have more anxiety when I'm on Zoom because it's just reminding me of all the amazing connections I have that I can't be with. And it's just hard. Yeah. And then she actually sent me an article about this
Yeah.
Zoom fatigue is really real. And now Microsoft Teams, of course, is in on this as well as others. So, and yet I would say that it is so much more engaging because we're human and we seek that kind of interaction. And I was asked recently on Zoom cocktail salon of sorts that friends who are on tonight. Actually, we've done it every Saturday for 12 weeks.
Oh, nice.
And we had to answer, what will you do first when COVID is quote unquote over? Maybe we should just say ebbed. And I said, hug somebody. I miss that the most. I mean, the pedicure might have been number 2, but hugging. And so this to me still is a great connection. Companies obviously can't do Zoom with every prospect they ever wanted to have, or even their current customers effectively and efficiently unless they unleash their sales force to do this with every customer. What are you seeing companies doing with regard to the medium, using Twitter for those updates? And are you seeing a great use of Teams and Zoom, or tell us?
Yeah, well, so I do consulting now, and I have a regular gig with an international agency. It's called Brunswick, and I have to say, and they're a UK firm and not cutting edge when it comes to technology, but when the situation required, they really stepped up and got everybody. They were using Blue Jeans for some reason, and got everybody on Zoom, and everybody has taken to it beautifully. Now, it's not, they do things like, it's a company of 1,200 people around the world. So they'll have like a US kind of every other week kind of Monday status meeting. That's kind of mostly about new business and stuff. So there's a bunch of people piled onto Zoom. You're not all talking amongst yourselves. It's everybody's muted and a few people are presenting, and there's an agenda, and it's a fairly corporate thing. But the local team, my San Francisco team, has a regular meeting for maybe 25 people. And chat is open, and there is an agenda, but there's also informality. And at the end of it, there's a yoga teacher in the group, and so she takes us through about 5 minutes of exercise at the end of each session, where we're dancing to something, or we're doing our, arm, twirls, whatever we're doing. And it's kind of fun. And in addition to that, there's a social hour strictly that's a trivia thing. It's again for the team. So there's no end to what you can do as a group, as an organization, to have some kind of socializing. It's probably really painful for people who don't like to look at themselves, feel self-conscious, didn't feel like, they were part of the team before this happened. I could understand how that could be, all that could be painful. But in a certain way, when you were talking about, just the idea of having a conversation with someone, I bet you we've all had essentially a video phone call with somebody, the way we used to have long ago. Again, sort of a scheduled audio phone call. It seems like a long time ago, but it's nice. Even though I have my work meetings on Zoom during the day, in between those sometimes is a date with somebody to catch up, and that's just a one-to-one conversation on Zoom, or even phone. It could be phone. I think you and I, Michaela, talked on the phone maybe a week ago. But
Yeah.
I mean, we do still need that connection, and I think it's still important to have those touch points. You wouldn't want those all day, every day either. Just like you can't really work if you're all day in video meetings either, as even audio meetings, either one.
Right.
So you have to kind of measure. And for me, I will say, I sort of guard my calendar, and I will say, if there's an option, let's do that social catch up, on Friday. So I have something to look forward to later in the week, or let's space these things out a little bit so they're not all back to back, because that's part of what causes this fatigue.
Right. Right. I think that it's, in addition, the whole transition of the use of tools. I'll use this example.
Yeah.
Shelley and I have a client for whom we are developing an entire brand and doing the persona work, and it's really exciting. The work we usually do is in person, right, in their conference room, and I'm able there, when I'm moderating that whole day, to watch expressions, to
Yeah.
see, to read the body language, do all the things that, of course, we do naturally when we've been in sales a long time. But that, I would say, is a big difference, because you're presenting, right? And even as a presenter, if I have the gallery view on, I can't really monitor the whole feeling in the room, and that makes it harder. There was a question from someone going into this evening is, what do you think about that? I mean, if you're in a profession where presenting, whether it's a home because you're in real estate, or work because you are taking people through your startup and you're looking for financing, and you don't want to wait until we have a vaccine, a year from now, etc. What do you do? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think about how to augment that part of what's a critical piece of the human connection?
I'm just a big believer in one-to-one connections. And so even if there's, the meeting after the meeting, so if you can't read the room as well on video, to arrange for a follow-up call with, the key people that you need to, follow up with, to just kind of have some way to kind of let your hair down with another person, off the clock, so to speak, from whatever the formality is or the agenda. And by the way, in person in an office, I also would counsel, you'll get to the bottom of something faster if you can have that one-to-one. uh, to the side, or before the meeting, or after the meeting, or after the project, assessment, or whatever it is, so that you can um, kind of just say, can we be candid here for a minute? Now that takes having a relationship with, the other person, to be able to say, can we just talk candidly? You can do this, by the way, also over email. It does take a little kind of writing skill for that to happen. But um, if there's a way to, connect with the decision maker, with the one who's, the influencer, the one who you especially want to understand the goals, whatever it is. I would say go for that.
Got it. Well, I think that there are businesses where people, if they've been considered non-essential, massage therapists, right? People who do a lot of body work, unless you're a chiropractor and an MD, and that becomes necessary, and it is essential for many people. But we have lots of friends, you and I both do, who have been in the salon business and are amazing body workers and have not been able to do this. And they're trying to figure out, because it's not that they're going to be able to do that anytime soon, to how to do this, to teach people one-on-one their own exercises and their own body manipulation, if you will, to help themselves. Well, it won't be the same thing to try and get to something. So here may be another place where the communication of how to do that and why, and not to be afraid of it, has been very nascent, right? Before this, who would have done that? And now, unless you're on an island somehow deserted with Wi-Fi. But anyway, so, do you think that that we're going to have lots of new communications methods evolve? And the follow-on question to that, so you can take all of this, are we going to see something even newer? So we have TikTok, obviously. I'm here with my godson, Stephen, who's the sales manager at Snapchat, whom you know from Twitter. Are we going to see new things come out of this, new communication, new social channels come out of this?
I'm sure new things will come out. I don't know if they will come out as a result of COVID necessarily. It's just that new platforms and technologies come up all the time. One that was in a huge flap last week, and I'll spare you if everybody's not up on this, is something called Clubhouse, which is an audio only, right now invitation only service. That sounds to me like an old telephone party line, frankly. But it's new, and it got a lot of VCs excited because they could all talk amongst themselves, apparently. But yeah, so new things will come. The thing to remember about all of these is there's not one size fits all. It's not like, oh, now we all, 300 million Americans have to turn now to this thing, and that's the thing. It's a very, sort of splintered landscape with a lot of different tools for different people for different uses. Now I forgot the first part of your question.
Well, it's just that as these things emerge, and as professions who are non-essential need so desperately these communication tools, what do you recommend to those people?
Well, it seems like, it depends what their service is, but it sure seems like a lot of people are taking advantage of good old YouTube. And there are I'm sure, a million tutorials for making how-to videos that are useful tutorials. I recently I had a dog walker for a little while. I got my new dog last November, and this guy was walking her in the neighborhood, I don't know, say 3 months, I guess. And then when the shutdown happened, he basically stopped working. Well, I just got an email from him that he's moving to Texas. Good luck to him. He's going when it's safe to go. That's all I know. And he said, I'm going to produce a bunch of videos about dog training. you know, more power to them. It seems to me
Right.
there's, you know, a million of these all over. I've heard about people doing, you know, hair coloring and hair cutting, and a million on yoga and other fitness things. It seems like that's a good medium for that kind of thing, to keep up one's kind of brand and general business interest. Then the challenge is same as always, getting an audience. And it might be fine for one's private, you know, selection of followers and word of mouth from that. It's much harder, I think, to build a big audience for these things, although it does happen
Right.
occasionally. But anyway, I think video is the best for that. I'm personally a video skeptic. I'm someone who does not like to have to watch the video for customer support. I want to say, so give me the transcript of the video and I'll write it down. But there are times that it actually, you know, can really help in showing a specific thing and showing how to undo something or make something. So I think YouTube and I get Vimeo is a little bit more for creative, but YouTube seems like it's a place that people are going for a lot of that sort of how-to and training and kind of service videos.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were on one of our very first salons with Amanda Dameron, who had been my editor-in-chief at Dwell, and now is head of all content for Tastemade, you know, video channel for millennials, basically. But they're just exploding right now, right? Because everybody still wants to see all this ever more. You have time now to do. So it's interesting. I, like you, don't have a lot of patience for the customer service videos because they never give it to me in the way I want to receive it, right?
Exactly.
Like, oh my God, I'm finding that, can I just move the dot along and look at the end and then go backwards? But anyway, Sam Perry, whom you know, says Clubhouse sounds like it's chasing Discord. You think so?
And I just wrote back. I've worked recently with Discord through this firm I work with, Brunswick, and I learned a lot about it. Discord, for those of you who don't know, is a lot like Slack in my mind in terms of the feature set. It's a lot like Slack, but it's kind of Slack for non-work. So it's for everything else. You can chat with people. You can have a voice call. You can have a video call, and you can have group interactions in it. So it's designed for private groups, essentially, to talk amongst yourselves. And so I don't know, Sam, because Clubhouse is so much smaller and more exclusive. I don't know. That's a good question. What will become of Clubhouse?
So your answer, Karen, are the 1,500 users for the $100 million valuation?
That is what Clubhouse is right now.
Wow. Now, see, there was one of those pet rock things. Like, come on, you know?
This could be a little bit, you know, we're drinking too much Kool-Aid here.
Absolutely. Well, plenty, you know, liquor sales are up 275% since COVID. So maybe that's what's happening here. It's drinking and investing at the same time.
Yeah.
Honestly. I'd love if there are any other questions from the community, salon community, anybody else on things? And Sam says, if you've seen here, Discord's popular with his 16-year-old, and
big,
also with conference followers. And
oh, EG, interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, the Discord team, Sam, I can tell you, they're very keen to have non-gamers doing a bunch of things on Discord. They're already getting that. There was a big story in Forbes last week about them, and you probably saw they had a new round of investment. So they're very interested in being not associated only with gamers and gamer culture. And people older than 16.
So one of my other questions, Karen, that we talked about earlier is, you know, often people and companies are judged by their followers, right? Oh, well, look at so-and-so has 1 million on Instagram and, you know, or 1 million on Twitter. Let's take Kara Swisher, right? and pretty few on Facebook and Instagram. So it's not that, you know, she doesn't have anything worth sharing or saying there. It's that she's chosen a channel. What do you think about the, you know, following the numbers of, and especially as we stratify influencers from nano to micro all the way to
Yeah,
celebrity? What's your feeling?
don't do it. I mean, it's important to note, I should say, I'm being a little flippant here, for people who are trying to make a mark with a young business, for example, absolutely having the attention of an influencer who has a lot of followers makes a big difference, for sure. It's not one necessarily that will last. It might last the life of a tweet, you know, or two, or a post from Instagram or something. But um, for to have it be the goal for oneself to say, well, we want to get to X many followers. Um, it doesn't. It's possible to do that, but the best way, the tried and true way, is the organic way, which is you put out good content. Yes, an influencer can kind of boost you along for a little bit. But it's much more about having kind of a steady cadence and maybe uh, pairing that with some good PR that is about the service or something unique and interesting that you've done, or some other you know, kind of story. That's PR is, you know, not new, but that's still a thing that can get attention. But you know, it's also useful to remember sometimes you don't need, you know, a big number, because as we all know, I think now, the bigger number doesn't mean that every one of us sees that,
Right.
you know, the post or the video or whatever it is. And I sometimes think that someone who's quite avid on Twitter, Mr. Trump, believes when he looks at his, you know, his follower count, that he's somehow broadcasting, everybody stops, with 60 million people or whatever it is, stop what they're doing to read his tweet, which is just, that's just not reality. I mean, that's just not the way any of these platforms work. So um, it's best, it's nice to look at a number. I remember when I reached 1,000 on Twitter, that was a big milestone. But um, unless you're really in a kind of big consumer business where you want to rack that up, but it takes years. It can take years, literally, and it's not just done by whatever you're posting on whatever platform that is. It's your whole kind of nest of activities you're doing around communication and and products and services
Yeah.
and happy customers and all the rest of it.
We have a question from Anita. What is your opinion about the boycott of Facebook and how that might affect companies using it? Users questioning using it. So, and they put a lot of money into it. What do you think?
So, from what I understand, first of all, digital advertising is still such a tiny fraction of broadcast and I guess other kinds of advertising. Michaela, you know this better than I do. Um, and I find it kind of puzzling that these are major advertisers, and it has definitely gotten some momentum, but quite a few of them seem to be saying we're going off for a month. And I'm not sure we would all notice if we missed a Starbucks ad on Facebook for a month. You know what I mean? It's sort of, I realize they're using it to pressure Mark to come to the table, and I believe they are meeting tomorrow. And this may be the thing that gets his attention more than anything else. But I don't believe it's it hasn't affected them yet. These things have lag time. I don't know that it will. For users, I mean, if you are loyal to, not just loyal to the brands that it might be saying something about this or acting on this right now, but if you are also reaching sort of a point of conscience for yourself, that's certainly worth thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Interestingly, I have a friend who has a lot of followers and a lot of clout, uh, Walt Mossberg, who was a tech reviewer for many years,
Right.
and he made a big case about getting off of Facebook. I think last year. I think it was a year ago or so, and he said, I don't like the management. I don't like how they're operating. I'm out of here. He was still using Twitter, uh, but didn't change his email. He wasn't going into hiding. He just was not going to use Facebook. Interestingly, about a month ago, he came back on to Facebook and said, because of COVID, I am wanting to keep in touch with people that I've been missing. I wouldn't ordinarily be seeing them, but I'm going to quit again. So I don't know when that is, but he's said that very clearly. So it's interesting that, people are finding, I'm at a breaking point. I'm not going to use it anymore. And other people are saying I would, but it's the only way I have to keep in touch with, far flung people. So I'm on it, but I don't like it. Everybody's going to have to come to some, or not going to have to. Everybody who cares about these things will come to some conclusion for themselves. But I don't think that's the majority of people. I think that most of us have kind of a habit of sharing and posting personal things on some service or another. And Facebook happens to own two of the biggest, most popular ones. So realistically, we're not all turning away from that, just as we are not all swearing off Amazon uh, because we may not like some of their policies.
Right.
It's not easy to figure out. I know some people are hardcore, and then most of the rest of us are not so hardcore.
Catherine McConville is letting us and sharing with us that there's a Lumascape of logos of companies boycotting Facebook, not
Oh
large,
yeah,
but growing.
yeah.
And if we Google it, we'd probably see who's participating and how fast is that growing.
I would add though, I mean, the fact is these companies need to reach their customers, and Facebook is a place where their customers are.
Right. Right.
So I don't know how tough they can actually talk. I would also add, I have long used a Chrome extension on Facebook that cuts out all the ads. So I don't see any of them.
Okay. Note
Yeah.
to everyone. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to ask you the last question, unless anybody else would like
Yes.
to ask a question, please. The live experience business has taken a huge hit, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, things just keep getting postponed. And the reality is we know those things are simply not coming back in 2020 unless they are willing to use a very different mode of interaction, right? And so from the very large consumer electronics show to the furniture markets to kitchen and bath and the builder show and NAB, and I could go on, really trying to figure out what they do. Again, it's not, you don't need to sit and wait, and companies realize they can't. They need to see their customers. They need to be able to interact. They need to have their customers have their certification and all that goes on at these events.
Yeah.
How much do you think, because in a way, many of these quote unquote trade shows are marketplaces, right? It's where those companies invest from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions in order to be there, quote unquote, in the place to meet all of their constituents, all the stakeholders in the industry and as such in their business. Do you believe we can use communication methods that we have at our disposal today, from channels and tools, to help augment that and recreate a different kind of interaction until such time we can come back together? Never mind the if we're ever coming back in the 50, 100,000 kind of throngs.
Right. Well, it's funny you say this. This is the last week. Sam, I don't know if you're in on this year, but the last week of an 8-week TED conference. TED canceled its April event in Vancouver in late February. And after a lot of to and fro, they came up with a virtual conference for what would have been 1,500 people together. And by the way, we all voted to postpone but not have a virtual conference because we all like the hallway moments and the personal connections that go on there. But that wasn't possible. So they built their own sort of dashboard, if you will, and hub so that, and they also rely on Zoom, interestingly, for sort of smaller discussion groups and get-togethers away from the program. The program is very much speaker or Q&A with speaker in the TED style, and the lineup has been great. They've been very good. And the reason it was 8 weeks is nobody could really devote the time if they weren't going to travel to a conference. They couldn't devote the time, but instead spread it out so that it's something for an hour or so, a few days a week, and in all different time zones, I might add. It's not just for East Coast or West Coast. They've made it work pretty well, I would say. I don't know if like I say, I don't know if Sam, you've been in on it, but
I think I agree.
It's worked pretty well. There's a sense of camaraderie. Now there's already a community spirit around TED, not like a big trade show. So I don't know how big it could get for someone, and you really need some good technology tools to make it work so that you can go from the big talk, make sure the questions get answered. For the TED experience, you're watching the talk, there's a stream of chat going on at the same time. People can insert links to references to things that someone is talking about. And you can send in questions and say how much you like the talk or whatever. And then there's constant feedback and surveys from TED in addition to all the rest of it. So I know it was a huge effort for them to do this, and it worked well for that kind of, it's kind of a community of people. Trade shows, honestly, I don't know. Other kinds of business conferences, I know Wired is looking at their fall conference. Recode, I think, or the Code Conference canceled this year. A number of others have canceled, or they're trying to figure out what to do. The Commonwealth Club even just is having online talks. It's not going to be one size fits all. And at some point we have to go, we're going to all want to go to something with more people in meet space, as we used to say.
Exactly.
And it might not be for another year or 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, one of our guests in August is the CEO of Freeman, who is the largest operator of events in the world. And we're going to be talking to Bob Priestek about that, about, they're prepared and ready. It is the cities with great trepidation, especially with the spikes, worried that regardless of the caution and the preparation, that it wouldn't be enough. And nobody obviously wants to have that on their hands if then super spreaders all of a sudden made tens of thousands of people sick. But we're going to talk to Bob about ways in which they've already innovated to help kind of bridge this gap and get us to a different place.
Yeah.
So that gets us right to our hour. Karen, I can't thank you enough. And I know that you also joined in on the salons, which I so appreciate. So thank you.
Yes.
Everybody, the link Ellie Hurtado put in chat so that you can connect to buy Karen's book if you don't have it, published by Simon & Schuster. Taking the work out of networking, it is ever more applicable, just as Bruce Mau's now with COVID. I mean, talk about so many of the things as if you knew, Karen, somehow we were going to need this more than ever.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. And next week, you'll want to join us for our Collective Conscience with Julia Cosgrove, the editor-in-chief of Afar, the amazing international travel magazine that looks at culture and the ways in which we travel in our minds, even when we can't travel in body. So please do join us, and thank you, and have a fabulous week. Chiming out from the Eastern Shore. Take care.
Thanks, Michaela. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.